All right, let's take you to this developing story now. The High Court in the Western Cape is hearing an application challenging John Hlophe's appointment to the Judicial Service Commission. DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille says the appointment of an impeached judge to serve on the Judicial Service Commission presents a clear conflict of interest. Let's unpack this further. Joining us is Professor Pierre de Vos. He is a constitutional law expert with the University of Cape Town. Prof, thanks very much indeed for your time. It's great to have you on. It's a certain kind of irony, isn't it? Appointed to the same body that recommended that he be impeached.
Yes, so this is obviously something that nobody had foreseen. The drafters of the Constitution hadn't foreseen it. So whether, and obviously if a judge is impeached and then sits on the body that's going to select judges, it clearly raises serious problems. Whether the decision by the National Assembly was irrational, that's a different question. I think this is not an easy case for the DA or whoever to convince the court of, because the whole system is such that members of parliament are represented on the Judicial Service Commission to represent the interest of the people through the democratically elected representatives. So one cannot put an absolute ban or give an absolute power to the National Assembly to select the people, because then the majority can veto nominations of any kind by the minority. So it is not clear to me how the case will come out, but that's different from whether, as a matter of principle, Judge Hlope as impeached judge should be on JSC.
Yeah. As you say, the writers of the Constitution didn't look into absolutely all of the aspects of how this is unfolding. And yeah, there is no legal impediment to him taking up this position. Freedom Under Law has been arguing in court today that it is, yes, wholly improper, but is this notion of impropriety enough? Will it be enough to convince the court?
So this is not clear to me, because the bar that must be met for this to be invalidated is that the decision is irrational. So it is not whether it's wise or whether it's the best decision, it is whether it's irrational. So you have to look at the purpose of having the MPs on the from the National Assembly on the JSC. My view is that the purpose there is for political party voices to be heard on the JSC. When the political party selects the next judge, the theory is that the voters will judge the party accordingly. But maybe what should happen is that the National Assembly should adopt a very specific, narrow rule to deal with extreme cases like this. Whether the court is the right place to resolve the matter is not so clear.
Yeah, I'm just reading through the article that you've written quite extensively on the issue, and from what I can gauge, and you've said as much, it doesn't feel like this is a legal problem that should be decided in the courts.
Yes, this is my view, but the legal problem, if there is one, is maybe more likely to be for the JSC, when it sits. Because what might happen is that individual candidates coming before the court before the JSC might then challenge the presence of former Judge Hlope, and might argue that body cannot function or that there's a conflict of interest. But it seems to me the legal problems might arise for the JSC more so than for the National Assembly. I might, of course, be wrong. The court might find that it is irrational, but it is not as obvious as some other cases that this is the case.
So if indeed the case is unsuccessful in the High Court in the Western Cape, and former Judge Hlope does proceed to the JSC, this body that is tasked with appointing judges, what does that do for the reputation of the JSC and for the judiciary, one might even argue, which is already under fire from certain sectors of society?
Well, it obviously, in my view at least, poses a risk to the JSC, to its credibility and to the process of appointment. Much will depend, however, it seems to me, on how the JSC and the chairperson of the JSC handles the matter. If the court rejects these applications, former Judge Hlope is on the JSC, then it would be incumbent on the chairperson of the committee to try and make sure that this position is not going to be used in a way that is going to discredit the whole system. So it's a tricky situation. I mean, the incoming Chief Justice is going to face.
Yeah, I mean, just on the face of it, it's difficult to argue that it doesn't somehow sort of impede or tinge the work of the JSC.
Yes, at least in terms of the Constitution, the members of the National Assembly on the JSC, they at least do not sit in proceedings about the disciplining of judges, impeachment, and so on. So at least that is not going to happen. But obviously there is a problem already.
All right, we do apologize. We seem to have lost our connection with Professor Pierre de Vos. I'm going to give it just a few moments to see if we can get him back on the line. Prof, are you there? And while I do that, you'll take a look at your screen there, and these are just some of the fast facts that we've been running, just to give you a sense of some of the context that's involved here. 1995, I believe, if we can just go back to that first slide, please, was when former Judge John Hlophe. Next slide, please. There we go. The first black judge to be permanently appointed to the High Court in the Western Cape, and just 5 years later appointed as Western Cape Judge President by then President Thabo Mbeki. An illustrious career that, as we know, ended just recently with his impeachment. He is now former Judge John Hlophe, and his appointment to the JSC, this body that is tasked with appointing judges to our judiciary, is currently unfolding in the High Court in the Western Cape, where a whole range of organizations are challenging this appointment. Professor de Vos, you're back with us, and I really just wanted you to finish that thought about, what his appointment would do, just in terms of the tinge, the cloud, for lack of a better term, that it would cast on the work of the JSC.
Yes, so I was saying that it is going to be tricky because, on the one hand, clearly, if you have basically the person who ate the chickens to look after the chickens, it's not a good idea. It does raise questions. It raises also broader questions about the JSC, about how do we balance the importance and recognize the importance of having some political, democratically mandated input in the JSC, because the courts are really important and there needs to be some accountability in that sense. But at the same time, ensure that the process does not further taint or the judiciary does not influence the legitimacy and authority of the judiciary. So the case actually raises really complicated and important legal issues and issues of principle.
Yeah, and the other issue, and this is not new, we've seen judges in interviews with the JSC facing incredibly personal attacks that don't seem to try to interrogate their fitness to hold one or other position, but is rather just based on these personal attacks. And I wonder, Prof, you've written about this as well. I wonder whether it will be true that this appointment might as well dissuade some really qualified candidates from even applying for positions.
Yes, so I cannot speculate on this, but this is, of course, a worry. The JSC in most recent times have actually, and the chairperson has actually been better at making sure that the process does what it's supposed to do. Test the candidates vigorously without personal, politically inspired attacks and so on. Mm-hmm. So the potential damage could be limited. Once again, I think if the running of the JSC and the chairperson runs the JSC quite tightly, to try and at least prevent some of the kinds of abuses that we have seen in the past.
Absolutely. Professor Pierre de Vos, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. Constitutional law expert at the University of Cape Town. And of course, this case is still unfolding at the High Court in the Western Cape, this application challenging John Hlophe's appointment to the Judicial Service Commission.